Hello, I'm Benjamin Anthony, founder and director of Our Soldiers Speak and co-founder of the Miryam Institute. And it's my pleasure to host Israel Briefing, where we present to you a series of briefings with some of the most prominent individuals engaged in the security and policy development of the State of Israel. On this episode, we feature member of the Knesset Yoav Kisch, a member of the Likud party. Prior to commencing his career as a politician and legislator, Yoav Kisch served as an aviator in the Israel Air Force. He's here briefing a unique delegation of 40 cadets from the United States military academies. The delegation is comprised of individuals drawn from West Point Military Academy, the United States Air Force Academy, and Virginia Military Institute. All of them will go on to serve as officers in the United States Armed Forces, including in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marine Corps. They traveled to Israel as part of an extraordinary initiative, which brings these future defenders of the great United States to Poland to tour the Warsaw Ghetto and also Auschwitz and Auschwitz-Birkenau, and thereafter they traveled directly on to the State of Israel for a 14-day strategy and policy tour that crisscrosses the entire country. On JBS, here is another in our series, Israel Briefing.
I'm very happy to see you all here, and you're mostly welcome. I'll give you a short brief about my background and then a few things about what's going on, and then I'll leave it for questions from you guys. My name is Yoav Kisch. I became a Knesset member about 4 or 5 years ago from the Likud party, the coalition party, the party of our Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And actually, this is my committee. I used to be, now we're on verge of changing Knesset, but I used to be the chairman of the Internal Affairs and Environmental Issues Committee, which is the committee you're sitting here, and that's my last position in this in the Knesset before we head to elections. It's funny, I'm saying heading to elections. We just finished elections. I got re-elected, and now we're going to another election. So it's kind of a little bit crazy, but things happen in politics. My background, I'll go in short. I joined the army when I was 18. In Israel, service is compulsory service, men and women. We have a very internal issue regarding the Ultra-Orthodox service in the army and where they should go, and this is a very hard debate within the Israeli society. Leaving that aside, I served for about 10 years in the Israeli army as a pilot. I flew F-16, still flying, by the way, on the edge of finishing. On the 1st of August is my last farewell flight. Participated in all the Israeli wars since I was an operational pilot. Most of them were on the Lebanon area or Gaza. And about 5-6 years ago, I joined the Israeli Knesset. Before that, I was a pilot also in El Al on the commercial airliner, and worked a little bit in startups in the high-tech industry. So that's my background in general. You came into Israel in a very turmoil. You know, we just finished elections, we had about a term of 4 years, so we managed to develop and move things by our agenda, and then we went to elections, and it looked like that the right, led by Netanyahu, won the election. We had 65 out of 120. We have 120 seats in the Knesset, where you're sitting here. And if you have more than 60, that means you have the majority. 65 members were recommending Benjamin Netanyahu to continue as the prime minister. And when it turned out to sign the agreements between the different parties in the coalition, we failed to get an agreement from Lieberman party. Lieberman used to be the security minister. And actually, whatever we offered and tried, and we almost, gave Lieberman the opportunity to get all what he wanted. He refused to join the government. which actually forced us to move in one or two directions. One is that the president, Ruby Rivlin, was supposed to give the mission of getting a government to some other party. And that was something that we didn't want. That's why we preferred to go back to election and try to get more votes. And that's a risk, by the way. But actually, when we analyzed the situation, we had 60 against 60 because Lieberman had 5 mandates. So that's why there was a total deadlock, and we couldn't solve it in the current elections. And I hope that in the next elections, we'll be able to get more than 60 without Lieberman. That means that basically would continue to be in the government with Netanyahu. That's where you are right now in the Israeli politics. And we're basically just finished elections, and we're starting our next election. So I already finished 2 terms in the Knesset, but in a very short time. Now looking at the security issues in the region. I don't know if you heard about it, just last night there was an attack on T4 in Syria, where Iranian forces are putting in and bringing weapons to T4 and trying to push them to our border, either in the front of Syria or the front of Lebanon. And there was an attack on one of the locations there that destroyed their target to bring weapons to the region. So we basically, Israel is not taking official responsibility on this action, but I'm just mentioning that Iran lost last night one of their assets, and this is a situation that is going on for a long time. For some short period, Israel did took responsibility on kind of attacks, but usually we're trying, and there's no response from the Israeli authorities. In addition, we have a lot of tension in Gaza Strip. Every Friday we have demonstrations. So the Israeli army, it's spread of so many different missions. One could be attacking hundreds or 1,000 miles from Israel, and an Iranian base that is trying to bring weapons to the region, and on the other hand, facing a mob trying to cross our borders with a target to kidnap, kill, whatever, our civilians. So, in trying to understand that is the complexity of what Israel is facing on a daily basis. And putting into that again, that Israel is a strong democracy, that everybody here in Israel has equal rights, and that means it doesn't matter which minority you are, if you're an Arab, a Druze, a Muslim, a Christian, whatever, you have freedom of religion, and everything is equal for every person here. And also, of course, the gay and lesbian community, everybody has equal rights and everybody can do. I think in that sense, that's part of the great partnership between the US and Israel, maintaining the same values in the sense of maintaining personal rights. And this is something that sometimes people forget. Because, for example, in Gaza, if you're a gay people, you're probably either going to find yourself in jail or killed. So this is things that are not allowed there. And if you look at the rights of the people themselves, the rights of the Arab minority in Israel, is no other state in the region, Arab state, gives such equal rights as we do, and freedom to the people. So that's just to get into proportions in that sense. And now a few words about my background as a pilot, because I think this has also got to do with, might be interested. We basically, as I said, I participated in the Lebanon War and in Gaza, and there's one major thing that in Israel I think we even took it to the extreme, and that is the sense of avoiding uninvolved damage, let's say, uninvolved people damage, and there's many missions that you as a pilot get the order to send the bomb. You send the bomb and you are on the edge of cancel the attack, as long, and there's, we have eyes on the ground, and we see if, not on the ground, but eyes from above that look at the target, and if we see that there's any chance for uninvolved casualties, we stop the attack, even though that we know that by doing that we're endangering our own people. Because if you're attacking a weapon base or a rocket or whatever, and the enemy against us has no moral limits. Their specific targeting are civilians, so it's not a fight between armies. They have rockets that they fire in order to kill Israeli civilians. That's their target, that's their goal, that's their aspirations. And we are trying to hit only the terrorists themselves, and they also hide within the civilian society. So they might be launching their rockets from a mosque, from a minister, from a hospital, from schools, and that's because they know that we are avoiding to hurt uninvolved people. So that's the fight that we have in Gaza. If we were acting differently, sometimes I tell myself, if we were act differently and we would just hit wherever we got fired from, maybe we would have, the results won't be, there'll be more casualties on the other side, but we would stop the war much faster. So right now we're very much careful in aiming, and by doing so, it's not directly, but indirectly, we're increasing, unfortunately, our own casualties. And this is something that is going on, this argument in Israel between how, for example, when the last Tzuk Eitan, that's the last operation 4 or 5 years ago, we had boots on the ground in Gaza. We had our paratroops going into Gaza, and this was one neighborhood that, some people said, just bomb tell the people there that they have to leave. If they're not leaving, we're bombing it, and that's it. And on the other hand, we waited until we saw where the fire came over, and then we hit it. So we paid in casualties on that, and I was very upset that this was the strategy. I think the strategy should be that if we're risking our own men, we should tell our enemy and the civilians there, you need to vacate this area, because this area has to became a battle zone. Everyone who's in this area is going to be injured. And then you could move in and much safer protect your own people. So on this case, I was very upset, and this was also a very big debate. So I'm now just giving you a little bit of the dilemmas that we have in Israel, and I'm leaving the floor for your questions. So
my question is, you mentioned the Ultra-Orthodox service. What is the Likud's party's thoughts on this issue?
We actually started the process, and there's been a big change from what used to be here 10 years ago. I was involved in that process, and there's two things that you can learn from that. One, that if you're trying to force people to join the army in that sense, you get the positive response. So the people feel that you're trying to force them, and they kick off. So you're getting the Ultra-Orthodox society to be against this kind of move, which reduced the trend that people were joining the army on that sense. On the other hand, we believe that everybody should be equal. If my son goes to the army, their son should also go to the army, in one exception. And that's what we added as Israel is a Jewish and democratic state. So those who are studying in the yeshivot, in the studying Torah, they might be exempt for a few years from going to service. But those who are not, they should come and join the army. And on this, how to do this, basically, I think that we need to get into some kind of coordination with them, not in a direct conflict, because this reduces the rates of joining the army. And on the other hand, by building their own, their own line of service. So we have a battalion which is Ultra-Orthodox, and they do not have women in the battalion. And they are in men-only environment. And so they can maintain their own identity, join the army, and service. So to summarize it, we already passed a bill in the last Knesset and you need 3 votes. So the first vote went approved, and in order to finish it, this is what we're going to do in this Knesset, and basically it's taking the same bill, maybe with some small changes, but this is what's going to move. So in general, it gives them, as I say, there's a target of numbers of youth that should join the army. They should, if the society as a whole would say, they fill into these targets, then it move forward with no other process. If they fail and there's some kind of decline in their numbers, then there's less money going to their schools and things like that. So there's some kind of benefits and carrots and sticks, as they say, to do this process, to move on with this process. I was asked if you understand why do men are separated from women. I don't know if you know that, but for the Ultra-Orthodox, like in the synagogue, there's a prayer zone for men and for women. Their belief is that it should be separated. And that's their beliefs. It's like, you can argue about it, say, I think this is wrong, it's not wrong, but as Ultra-Orthodox people, you would see them, they're not touching men and women between them. They won't say hi or something, which you see it on other societies, and they're very much on the separation issue. And for them, if we would try to say, listen guys, you're joining the army to the normal path, it would not work. They would rather go to jail and won't send their kids to this kind of structure. So we build our own structure for them. It's true that we had voices from feminist voices saying, hey, come on, you're now hurting the women. Why are you doing that? That hurts the women. So it's tough when you need to accept, both people and women, men and women agenda as equal on the one hand, and on the other hand, you want to accept their beliefs, and you cannot force them to change their beliefs. So also, it's not something that we're trying to do. So we're trying to figure out the way how do you continue to do both. By the way, what we do is that as long as it's compulsory service, these soldiers has their own structure. Once you move into tzva keva, which means if some of them are and they do stay in the army for career, then they're joined into the army normal path, I'd say. So everybody's together. So they know, those who wants to stay in the army for a career, that they have to shift from the separation system that they manage in the Ultra-Orthodox segment.
I'm just wondering, who among the Palestinians, either in Gaza or the West Bank, can the Israeli government talk to and negotiate with? Who can they talk to who's ruling de facto in those different regions?
Who could be our partners to negotiate in between the Palestinians in Gaza and the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria?
Yes.
Okay. So in Gaza, the ruling party is Hamas, which is extreme religious movement, which on its flag is their main belief is to destroy Israel. So there is no negotiations with Hamas. And Hamas is, as you might hear, there's you have ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hamas. These are all have differences. Some are Shia, some are Sunni, but in their let's say approach to Israel, I say they're all the same, and we have no discussion with these guys. By the way, they didn't control Gaza in the beginning. In the beginning, Gaza was given to the Palestinian Authority. There was elections in Gaza. Hamas got the power by elections. Since then, there's been no election. Hamas took the Palestinian Authority officers and killed them all, threw them from bridges with their heads down, and by simple violence is controlling Gaza, and basically the ones who are being mostly hurt by that is the people themselves in Gaza. You have about 2 million people living in Gaza under extreme vicious regime, which has no sensitivity to human rights at all, and has one target to destroy Israel. So that's the situation we're facing in Gaza. They tried to do it with rockets, and then we built the Iron Dome, so now they try to dig tunnels, and we're fighting constantly against the tunnels. And that's the situation with Gaza. With Gaza, the way I see it, no chance for negotiations for peace. The only way that they could is just simply by hitting them and letting them know that whatever they would do, they would pay much harder on all aspects. The problem is that they don't care if people are getting killed, only if their leaders and are the one who's sensitive. So that's why fighting them against, targeting their leaders is the most effective way in putting forward the message that if they mess with us, they're going to be dead. That's as simple as that. So that's Gaza. Palestinian Authority is a different story in the sense that there have been a cooperation and there's been an agreement signed in '91, Oslo agreement between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. Some people in Israel, more to the left I would say, believe that they are partners for discussions for peace. In the right, I think that, at least I see it in a different way. I think that, and now we're going into maybe the Trump, the deal of the century plan. I think that in Israel there's a strong majority that knows and understands that there cannot be another state between the sea and Jordan, and there's no chance for a Palestinian state. Because if you try to simplify that, we left Gaza and we see what happened. And to take a problem like Gaza and magnify it 30 times within the heart of Israel is something that Israel cannot afford. So that's as simple as that. I'm trying to, and that's not going into discussions who has the right on the land and who, and I'm putting that aside. I'm just saying that we cannot afford having another state within Israel. So that's why I don't think this is something that can pass through. But what we're talking about is solutions of autonomy, because and we have some kind of that what's going on in the region. But basically what I believe is that Israel need to apply sovereignty over the Jewish areas in Judea and Samaria, and basically create a situation that these areas are controlled not by Israeli army but the Israel state. And regarding the mass areas of the Palestinians within Judea and Samaria, basically they should have autonomy that should be managed as an autonomy, and for future terms might work together with Jordan, where you have majority of Palestinians anyway there. You have the king controlling Jordan. Right now he's not interested in that, but things can change in the future, and we should prepare for such a coalition for the future. That's what I see in the issue. So I'm sorry, I hope it was interesting.
Thank you.
It was very nice to hear you and see you guys, and good luck on your trip to Israel.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. And we're especially pleased to remind you that thanks to a generous matching gift from the Cayley family, every new or increased dollar you donate to JBS will be worth double to JBS. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.